and taking your finger and going right down the line. You could apply mostly on digital, right? So what's most comfortable for you. Now, most people don't on their computers use their finger on the screen. What they do is they use their mouse. So, let me say that again. So, when you're reading online, many of our students love and are so used to using their mouse, and they use it to kind of underline and to skim through, because again, a visual pacer will always help you to pull through the information more quickly. It will help you to pull through the information more quickly. And so they'll use that. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll right click, and these are different techniques that actually I didn't come up with. A lot of our students actually did, because again, you're looking for that efficiency, and they'll say, like, they come up with all these great ideas. That's why I love our memory program too. A lot of great ideas are come after I teach people the chain linking method, and the story method, and we talk about the peg system and the different ancient code of memory. People come up with all these great different applications, and so and be able to share with us, and that's what I'm sharing back. So it's kind of like you learn it and then you earn it because you get rewarded for it, then you return it, because then you get back. So it's kind of neat. But anyway, so you could do all these different things. You could right click and highlight and make everything in the background black, which highlights, makes the fonting white, which for some people it's a lot more readable. And that's really the key to online reading, is readability. I would say, it's not one of the questions that were posted here, is just you have to be careful of online reading because of eye strain. It's you could look online and just Google strategies for recovering from eye strain and such. But I personally generally would not spend more than an hour online at a time without taking a moment rest of my eyes and focus off in the distance. Because if your eyes stay focused to one area, your eyes muscle, right? And so it's nice to take breaks and look off in the distance, or do that thing that we talked about called palming, where we're just kind of cupping our eyes with gently with our fingers, and just giving it a little bit of rest, especially for online reading. But the other thing you could do that I think a lot of people like is a resource that our team uses, and it's called Readability. If you go to a site called readability.com, and readability.com, you could watch an interesting video where it's basically when you download this, it's actually free, and you get a nav bar that goes in your browser. And what happens when you click it, one of the functions is when you click it, and they have a wide array of different tools and apps and stuff, but when you click on the readability tab, what happens is they'll take the website and they'll make it reader friendly and really user friendly. Because you know how sometimes you're reading online and they have different columns, and there's like words here and then there's a section here. What Readability does, it takes the screen and it formats in a way that's very reader friendly, and it makes it even easier to read, and so then obviously it's easier to read more quickly, if that makes any sense. So something that we recommend. We're not getting compensated in any way for recommending it, but go to the site, and if it serves you, I believe it's complimentary. You could go there and try it out and let us know how it works for you. For our team, it works very well, and I know with some of our clients have also brought it to our attention, and it serves them also really well as well. Okay, another question as we're going through this, I'm going to go through these kind of quick, is do I need to use my finger or visual pacer every time I read? And that's a great question, because I think I touched on it already. And I would say the answer is no. Of course, you don't have to use your finger whenever you want to read. What I would say is it's two things. It's a tool you could use to read faster, because you will read faster generally every time you use a visual pacer as opposed to when you don't, because of those reasons that we explained in the program. And you could just test it. And this is, I love things that are very empirical. Read something for a couple of minutes, count the number of lines, use your finger the first time, and then read for another 2 minutes, and then don't read your finger reading with your finger, and then count the number of lines and see if there's a difference. And I think what you'll find for the most part is you'll have greater efficiency and effectiveness, speed and focus by using a visual pacer. And the other second thing that it is, besides an actual tool for doing that, is it's training, because it's a training tool that'll pull you through the information. Chiropractor was explaining to me that that I need to go in there because I'm not able to, because I like to just be at peak health, because we travel a lot and I speak a lot, and saying that certain adjustments, even when I'm at the gym or I'm with the trainer, I can't make on my own, because it takes that external force to be able to do that. And he was comparing it actually to speed reading, because he's also a client of ours. And it's kind of interesting, by using that visual pacer as an external device that kind of leads your focus through. It helps, but it also trains you. So as it's pulling you through, you could it's a kind of a self-pacer for yourself, so you could use it and you could always go faster. So it's kind of like your built-in treadmill, if you will, if that makes sense. You could push it up to 6.0 and 6.5 and 7.0 and 7.5 and just up and up and up, and it's kind of like you're running faster on the treadmill. So when you slow down, it actually feels slower. And so that's where your growth comes in, right? Because you're conditioning yourself. And I think that's going to be one of the upcoming questions. Now, obviously, you don't have to read with your finger all the time, because sometimes it's not practical. Some people might, sometimes if they're kind of crunched up on the train, or they're lying there in bed, or, I always teach people or I recommend people use what's optimal, in your current situation, your current environment. Even in the program when we talked about physiology and being in a visual posture, where you're upright, sometimes it's not practical, but when you want to get the results, you have those tools to be able to do that. So I would recommend using your finger when you read, especially when you're going through and you're doing the 4, 3, 2, 1 exercises, and then when you slow down, you'll read. You won't read quite as fast, but you'll still be reading faster than you probably started with it, because you've trained your eyes, you've trained your mind to be able to go through and take in that information. And as you're going through it, it's also an exercise in focus. So I would recommend using your finger when you read, when you want to get those kind of results, or if you want to train and for higher speeds, then that's there for you also as well. Next question is, sometimes when I'm reading, I feel like I actually understand scanning reverse. Is that possible to read backwards? And I think I covered this also. I know I covered this in the program, but I'll elaborate on it a little bit more here. What I think this person is asking is, I taught different ways of scanning, in the program. One had to do with S forms, where you're taking your finger and making an S shape down the page. Now it's not actually reading, because I'm defining reading as something that has the requisite comprehension. But what you're doing is, scanning is a great tool to be able to get the big picture, to get the gist of what you need to know, to be able to get a preview, to be able to stimulate questions, because when you're rushing through information, it makes your conscious and unconscious mind saying, oh, what was that? What was their name? What's going on here? And it creates all these questions, and we talked about in the program how questions are the answer. And so when you actually go through and actually read the material, you get more out of it the second time, because you have those questions built in. And even more than if you actually read it twice, according to what people report. So you have the S forms, you have the Z forms, which is just taking the reverse. You're using your finger down the page in the shape of a Z. You have your finger going straight down the center. But what this person I think is asking is, one of the methods I recommended is reading forwards, and then as your finger is going back, it's you could actually read. And so you could actually double your reading speed right now by reading backwards, meaning you go kind of like a computer printer. Those old printers would go print the first line left to right, and then it would print the next line right to left, and so on. As you're doing that, the brain could decode words in any orientation, because your mind is incredible, especially when you go at faster speeds, because when you look at a picture, you don't look at it left to right. If you look at a picture, in your environment right now, if you look at it, you're not looking at left to right or up and down and right to left. You're taking it in one gestalt, if you will. But if you're going, the key though is to do it faster, because if you go through it fast, then you're kind of seeing the whole line almost in an instant and as an image, and so then you get the understanding. But if you go slow, then you start self-vocalizing, and even if I read this page, any like it says brain can decode words in any orientation. If I read that backwards slow, it says orientation any in words decode can brain. It's a little bit more, it's definitely more difficult than taking your finger and going right across the page and kind of seeing that whole line as an image. And so that's what we're talking about, reading backwards. So, and to answer the question, as you're reading, remember you're going one line forward, coming back, reading the next line, going back, reading the next line, going back. Instead, you could skim and actually go one line forward and then read the next line going back, so you don't waste that return, right? So, that recovery, if you will, the recovery time of coming back to the left-hand margin, you could actually utilize it by actually underlining the next line. And if you do it through conditioning, as you're building up greater speed, you're seeing the whole line more quickly and getting the comprehension even more quickly. Then you could go through and yes, we definitely, to answer your question, we definitely have people report that if they go more quickly, they can read the first line, and then when they go back and they bring their finger back across the second line, they actually have comprehension. Then they go forward in the next line, back the next line, and so on. So that takes definitely practice and training, but again, the speed is the key, because you can't do it slow. Because if I was to read a line backwards, the second line, for example, would say, we service or product our sell we before. It doesn't make any sense. So you need the speed to be able to go through it. So I hope that helps. All right, the next question we're going to answer here is, this is a big one. We got this submitted quite a few times. What can I do to get myself motivated to start and finish this program and continue to apply what I learn? And we actually copied and pasted that right from the form, so it's actually should have apply what I learned in there. Okay, so how are you more motivated? So I would assume that when people ask this question, this is not something that's exclusive to quick reading. That motivation is key. It is one of the keys to success is getting yourself to do something. And I'm not an absolute master of this, but I'll share my perspective on it about human motivation. First off, I'll say that the success strategy or the recipe that I follow is what I call H cubed. H cubed meaning that success goes from your head to your heart to your hands. Your head to your heart to your hands. And so what that means to me is that in your head you have your beliefs, you have your thoughts, you have your visualizations, you have your mental strategies. Those are the kind of things that I think that are more or inside your head. That's the mental. The heart signifies for me the emotional, and those are your drives. So when I think about heart as a metaphor, I'm thinking about these are your motivations. These are your values, if you will. These are your passions and your drive. What gets you to do what you should do. And the third H is your hands, which is the physical. So you go from mental, emotional to physical in that syntax. And the physical is with your hands is, when I'm looking to learn from somebody, I want to know what their actions are. I want to know what their behaviors are. I want to know what their best practices are. I want to know what their habits are, right? And so, we have this program called Circles of Genius. And when I'm talking to individuals who are at a particular level of genius, and I don't mean genius IQ, what I mean is people that have exhibited exceptional results or talents or expertise in a specific area. And the areas that we focus on are really the ones that are core to most people, in terms of vital, which is their physical health, which is their relationships, which are their emotions, which are their money and finance or business. And then the fifth I focus on is their mind and their creativity. And so, circles of genius, what I'm doing when I'm on these interview calls, it's like a conversation that I'm having with people sitting at these different tables and asking them the kind of questions. Specifically, is how do they produce extraordinary, outstanding results consistently? And they do it elegantly. Elegantly meaning simple, but basically it's as complicated as it needs to be to get the powerful result. And what I'm asking them is specifically, it's what's going on in their head, what's going in their heart, and what's going on in their hands, if that makes sense. Because then I know that genius, has patterns. I call them patterns of power. Patterns of power pop. I'm always looking for those pops. Those ideas that pop inside your mind, and they pop in your body, and they pop in your emotions. And so, going back to this question is, how do I motivate myself? When I'm asking people about their heart or their emotions, is I want to know what drives people. Right, so I would say that let's apply it towards quick reading. If I tell people, most people, 90% of people, to go out and buy a book, never get past the first chapter. Part of it is not you don't know how to read. You have the head part down. You know how to read it, but you're not reading it with your hands, right? You're not picking it off the shelf and doing it. Or the metaphor could be also going to the gym. You could buy a gym membership, and you have a goal inside your mind of where you want to be physically and healthfully, but you're not using your hands or your feet to go to the gym. It's also the heart, again, the emotions. So a martial arts teacher told me once that you can't steer a parked car. You can't steer a parked car, and you need fuel too. And so part of it, what I would say is, to be motivated, is to get really clear about your values. And when I say values, I mean the things that are most important to you in life. And what I do is I associate myself, meaning I get very immersed and engaged with the things that are most valuable to me in life, and I link that to what I want to accomplish. So for example, if I want to get myself to go to the gym, and I think about the things that are important to me, whether it's my energy level, whether it's my ability to show up, to be able to teach, whether it's my ability to be there for the people I care about, I know that's going to come from higher levels of energy and being here on this planet as long as I could be. And I sensitize myself to those values, and I feel it. I don't just keep it in my head. I don't just picture it, because I could sit in a room and picture things and affirm things all day inside my mind. But if they don't inspire my emotions, then I won't get the result. Just like if you've gone through our quick recall program, I always ask people, what do you see in terms of what are you visualizing to remember it, and what do you feel? What do you feel? Because the emotions are so key and critical. So I would say, get in touch with your values, associate them to your outcome, in terms of the result that you want to be able to create. I would also say to make a decision. And when I say decision, I mean decision in the purest form of the word, like decision, like incision, to cut off from any other possibility, then you're going to do it. When a lot of people say that they're going to, reach certain New Year's resolutions, it's more of a resolution is very different than a result. So a lot of people are interested in a lot of things, but they're not really committed. And I think that commitment comes from making a decision, saying, I'm going to do it. And it sounds like it's so simple, but I also think that success sometimes can be that simple. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's simple to go through and saying, I'm going to do it. And there are times in all our lives when we've decided certain things, when we say we're not going back, or we're going to do something, and we do it. And that's the kind of place and strength that you're coming from when you make that decision. Because the reason why I spend time with emotions and motivation, motive for action, because results is very powerful to be able to have them, but reasons precede results. Your reasons to do something always precedes the results. All right, otherwise you're never going to have the fuel or the passion to be able to do that.